What is darkness in media? What is dark media? Well, obviously that is going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I'll do my best to be clear and clarify what I mean when I say that I've been thinking a lot about dark media. This can be music, this can be video games, this can be books, stories, any sort of fantasy where the medium is darkness, but that's not the message, that's just the medium via which the message must travel, right? Black metal, or the art of John Blanche, very fittingly, or H.R. Giger, or dark fantasy works like Berserk. And it is something that I see disappearing more and more often from some of the more popular icons of said dark media. The grit is getting washed out. It's getting, as it gets more popularized, right? It's something that we've seen happen over and over again. People, me included, are saying, "Oh, Warhammer is losing its Grimdark," for example. But I also think that some of my favorite death metal bands, the stuff that they produced 20 years ago, was heavier, was darker. You know, they had less to lose. They weren't as big, so it didn't matter as much. They could push the boundaries, they could try new things. It's a story as old as time, I suppose. But why is it important? Why will it be missed? Mind you, it's not that there are no grimdark examples getting made today, or dark fantasy examples getting made today. Quite the opposite. I would argue it's kind of bigger, just because of the internet. Bigger than it used to be. But I think what is being lost a bit is the purpose behind it. It's not something that it has to be there just because there is a demand for it. Not because there is a demand for like violent video games with gruesome art and gruesome mechanics and executions, and I don't think that's the point. Yes, there is a market for that, but I think that obviously these IPs or these artists or these companies are inevitably going to lose their aim, their way, if you will, eventually, if they are not properly oriented from the start. And same with the people who consume said things. It is a double-edged sword. It can take you down a path, like being a consumer of dark media. For example, sometimes consuming too much of this stuff without the sophistication of properly processing it, properly analyzing it, or understanding it, can make you depressed or nihilistic. Mine is like if you're having, let's say, an anxiety attack, and you say, "Oh, I'm gonna play a horror movie." Well, horror movies are there for a reason. They have a point of existing, and they serve a purpose, but it's probably not best to watch them when you're having a panic attack, right? That being said, if you interact with it properly, with dark media that is, I think that it incredibly enriches your life. I want to talk more about what dark media is to me, right? Think about darkness, think about the abyss. It means there is less light there, because it is so deep down below, right? Like, think about the actual abyss, like the bottom of the ocean. It is so dark because it's very deep, if you will, so no light can reach there. And that's pretty much the same way I think about this sort of media. It has the potential to just be dark again for the sake of being dark, or it can be dark just because it is very deep. Now, in that depth, you can find things that are more genuine, that in the light, funnily enough, even though it's um, metaphysically counterintuitive to think of it that way. In that, in the darkness of those depths, you can find more genuine things. Using my example of the abyss of the ocean, the depths of the ocean. Yeah, there's some very strange and weird fishes existing down there, and all sorts of animals, but you get to see kind of like a very pure face of evolution, of creation, or whatever it is that you believe in. Something untainted by years of interaction with it. The thing is, the things that are constantly in the light, well, we're constantly exposed to them. The things that are in darkness, we don't see as often, and so we don't internalize them as much. Think of the compartmentalized aspect of life, the compartmentalized aspect of ourselves, things that perhaps we know exist, but that they are relegated so far behind our conscience that we barely interact with them mentally in any significant way. And that is one of the things that makes it so valuable, right? There is a value to things with an edge to them. There is a value with being exposed to the darkness of reality. It's very genuine, and it's even metaphysical in nature. I remember going to Japan once, and the temples, the Buddhist temples. You know, I used to think like, oh yeah, the Buddhists are very peaceful, and their art must be very serene, and it sure was. Sorry, their temples were very serene. They were very harmonious, but in many of them, there's also like statues of demons everywhere. And I remember inquiring as to what the heck is going on. Where are these demons everywhere? And well, those demons, well, there's many very deep explanations to them. One of my senseis back in the day was telling me about them. But those demons are forces of nature, you know. Those demons can be passion, they can be righteous fury, they can be as well cruelty and proper evil, but they process them more as like, oh yes, these are the forces of reality that humans may or may not interact with, or rather will interact with, whether they are aware of it or not. Same, very similar thing with Jungian psychoanalysis and the archetypes, right? So that's the first of the values in Darkness in Art. It exposes us to a reality that we may or may not be aware that it exists, but that it exists regardless. And often it does it by presenting us a fiction. That's the beauty of fiction, that's the beauty of stories. It's a great medium to get messages across past this barrier of the brain that just won't shut up. And there's also a danger to that, right? Of course, there's a danger to how vulnerable we are made by stories. That's how propaganda is used. But anyways, I digress. A more clear example of that is, I'm looking at these trees, at this village here, and I notice it's full of hanged bodies from like the trees and the beams off of the walls. Hanged, mutilated bodies. It's pretty gnarly stuff. It's pretty dark stuff. This village, I don't know much about the story, but it was probably raided by some demonic forces. Now, some people might think, oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty edgy. That's wild. It's metal. It means the stakes are high in this fictional universe, and that stuff happens. If I'm not careful, I might end up myself hanging off from a tree, dismembered, things like that. It centers you in. It immediately raises the stakes. It immediately raises your awareness, your alertness while you're playing this game. And some people may feel a curiosity about it, like, oh, like morbid curiosity, if you will. It's perfectly natural. Some people more than others. There's certainly a point until which it's unhealthy, obviously. But they might be like, oh yeah, I knew that there's places where villages get raided till this day, and people end up hanged from trees. You know, might help them interact better. Let's say with the medium. Like, oh yeah, I know that this happens. This feels more real. That's another value added to darkness in media. Again, darkness as the medium. Potentially, again, making it feel more real, more serious, more deep. And then there is the other type of person, someone like me, who, you know, I come from a country where this does happen. People are mutilated and hanged from bridges, where entire villages get raided sometimes, and hundreds of people go missing and are, unfortunately, they meet a very cruel fate, let's say. Very cruel and painful fate, and I myself have had friends whom that has happened to. Yeah, I already know that those things happen in life. I already know that there's demons in life, you know? Not literal, perhaps, demons like the ones that we see in this game that get possessed and raid a village, but there is something wrong with them, and thus they do horrible things, right? So that is a reality that I've been exposed to. Now, me myself, not everyone where I come from is like that, by the way. People are still able to carry on with their day-to-day and live a happy life, and don't, some of them, if they have the means, they don't even have to think too hard about those things, or too often about those things, even though it's happening. I guess we're all like that in one way or another. We all have blind spots. For me, I was, let's say, not impervious to the darkness in life, to evil, to the dark side of things, let's say. I wasn't blind to it. I wasn't attracted by it, but I was curious to understand it better. That is to say, just as I was scared of ghosts when I was a kid, and I was curious to understand them better, and so I would expose myself to like ghost movies, and I would go downstairs with the lights turned off. Downstairs, I didn't even have a 2-floor house, but I'd go to the kitchen with the lights turned off, little by little. And every time I would try to leave them off just a bit longer, so that I could grow more resistant to the evils of the ghosts. Just the same way, I started consuming more dark media, just to be able to grow ever more resistant. And the fun part is that it became one of the only ways, one of the only mediums where I am able to truly appreciate beauty, to truly appreciate death. Because the suspension of disbelief that I need to interact with a Grimdark story or a dark fantasy video game or a black metal song is less, funnily enough, than the suspension of disbelief that I need to interact with a Disney movie. I don't know, a cartoon franchise like Pokemon. I know some people get angry if you call it a cartoon. I don't have anything against Pokemon. I used to like it when I was a kid. But you know, it's just the suspension of disbelief that I need to engage properly with that universe is a lot more, let's say, than it is to engage with a universe like Berserk or Dark Souls or Warhammer 40,000. Because since they have so much darkness in them, they have much more depth and they feel much more real. Whereas in a different medium, perhaps more colorful, there's less depth in it. Now that's not always bad. Simple is not always wrong. I just happen to connect more with medium that, again, has more depth in it. Like even things like magical realism, like Hayao Miyazaki. He's very colorful, very bright. His stories are very bright, but they also have a very deep-rooted darkness in them. And it's sometimes hard to place where that feeling comes from. And that's, I think, one of the main reasons why I think it's so important to have dark media. It doesn't need to be necessarily like high testosterone media, for example. I sure love Conan the Barbarian, but I also sure love Dark Souls, which is a very gentle story, very gentle characters, very soft-spoken characters, even sometimes, and just the gameplay itself is not like very adrenalinic. It can be for sure, but it feels more sentimental or more emotional. Even if you don't know what's going on, the music, the character design, the what little lore you're able to pick up here and there, it just seems more feminine, I want to say, but not that that's a bad thing. I absolutely love those games. And yeah, again, that's darkness is the medium, and the game is literally called Dark Souls, and I absolutely love it. Or this game, Lords of the Fallen. I don't know much to say about this game yet, because I don't know much about the lore, but Lords of the Fallen is the name, right? There's depth in that. Lord is someone who's like above, who rules. Fallen is someone who is down, who is below. So there is a sweet kind of contradictory balance in there. You know, there is depth in it, and I just absolutely love that. So I think that's important. I am saddened whenever an IP starts to become like so much more bright and colorful and cartoonish. Of course, it's not the end of the world. There is still dark art getting made. It's less popular, as it should be. You know, it's not for everyone. I don't want every single IP that I like to become popular and become that. But whenever that happens, it is always bittersweet, but it's also sad. So yeah, that was the message for the message. That was a different type of like podcast this week. Usually I do this while drawing, but today I really wanted to play a bit more of this game. So thanks for coming, thanks for watching. Feel free to leave your opinion in the comments down below. Join the Guard if you want to support this project and guard our joy, our good times. That being said, as always, Ad Astra, remember there are no female custodies. And now, let's see if I will beat the crap out of that demon zombie thing, who's likely one of the guys who has been hanging people from trees, or whether he will beat the crap out of me and I shall meet my fate. Thanks for coming.